That morning was meant to become one of the happiest days of my life. My only son was getting married, and after everything my wife Elizabeth had gone through during the past year, I truly believed we had finally reached a peaceful moment we could finally hold on to. The house was quiet, except for the soft clinking of dishes from the kitchen and the slow ticking of the clock above the fireplace. Sunlight came through the living room windows, falling gently over framed photographs that had stayed in the same places for years. Birthday pictures, school graduations, family holidays by the sea, and one old photo of Tyler sitting on my shoulders during a 4th of July parade when he was just 6 years old. I remember staring at that picture while fixing my dark blue tie in the mirror. Something about that morning already felt off, even though I couldn't explain why. Elizabeth came out of the bedroom slowly, wearing a cream-colored dress she had bought just a week earlier. It was the first proper dress she had chosen since leaving the hospital after months of treatment. She moved carefully, one hand lightly touching the wall for support, but her eyes had a brightness I hadn't seen in a long time. She asked me if her earrings looked too simple for a wedding, and I told her she looked beautiful, and she did. But more than that, she looked hopeful. That was what hurt me later the most. She wasn't thinking about luxury, status, or expensive guests. She was simply happy to be a mother again, to watch her son begin a new chapter of life. After everything she had endured, that meant more to her than Tyler could probably ever understand. I finished my tie and picked up a small envelope from the dining table. Inside was the deed to our beachfront villa, a property I had worked nearly 30 years to keep safe through financial crises, long nights, and constant pressure. I had planned to give it to Tyler privately after the ceremony as a symbol of trust and family legacy. At that time, I still believed he understood what that meant. I still believed the values we raised him with were still there under the expensive suits, business meetings, and polished smiles that now defined his world. Then my phone buzzed once. Not loud, not urgent, but the sound felt strangely sharp in the quiet room. I looked down and saw Tyler's name. I expected something simple, maybe asking where we were or reminding us about timing. Instead, I opened a message that immediately changed everything. Dad, please don't come. Tiffany's family feels uncomfortable if you and Mom are there. I already told everyone you're traveling. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. I read it once, then again, and a third time, slower, as if reading it carefully could somehow change its meaning. My entire career had been built on precision. I had spent decades as an engineer, where one small mistake could cause everything to collapse. But nothing in that life prepared me for the feeling of being erased from my own son's wedding like an unwanted presence. Elizabeth noticed my silence immediately. After 40 years together, she didn't need words to understand. She stepped closer and asked softly, "What happened?" For a moment, I thought about hiding it from her. I wanted to protect her joy just a little longer, but she saw the truth before I spoke. I handed her the phone. Her eyes moved across the screen. Slowly, the color drained from her face. She sat down carefully, one hand going to her chest as she tried to steady her breathing, just like she had learned during her recovery. Even then, she tried to defend him. That is what mothers do when love becomes instinct. "Maybe he's just stressed," she whispered. I nodded, because I couldn't trust my voice yet. But something inside me had already started to shift. The message hurt, but something else disturbed me even more. During the last 2 years, I had allowed Tyler to help manage parts of our finances. I trusted him completely. I believed responsibility would help him grow into maturity. That morning, I decided to check. While Elizabeth sat quietly, I opened our shared banking account on my tablet. At first, everything looked normal. Bills, taxes, insurance. Then I noticed multiple large payments made to a luxury wedding planning company. The amounts were far higher than what Tyler had described as a small, simple wedding. I scrolled further. More transactions, different dates, same company. Slowly, the truth formed in front of me. The total came to around $250,000. For a few seconds, I just stared at the screen. Not angry, not yet, just cold understanding. Tyler had told us he wanted a modest wedding. He had said he didn't care about appearances, but behind our backs, he had used my accounts to fund a high-end event designed to impress Tiffany's wealthy family, while quietly removing us from the picture. The house felt even quieter now. Even the clock sounded louder. Elizabeth looked at me again, worried. "What is it?" Before I could answer, another memory came back. About a year ago, Tyler had asked me to sign some investment documents while I was traveling. He explained everything quickly over the phone, speaking with confidence that didn't leave room for questions. At that time, I trusted him completely, so I signed. Now, I reopened those files. The deeper I read, the heavier the silence became. One document stopped me completely. A mortgage agreement linked directly to our beachfront villa. My chest tightened as I read further. That property, the place Elizabeth loved most, the place we went whenever her health worsened, had been used as security for an investment tied to Tiffany's family. I stopped breathing for a moment. Tyler had never mentioned any of this. Not once. I called my friend William, a lawyer who had handled our affairs for years. I asked him to review everything immediately. We connected over video call, and I shared the documents. He stayed quiet for a long time. Too long. Finally, he leaned back. "Matthew, you still have legal control, but you need to act fast. I asked the question I already feared. Is the villa tied to their deal? He nodded. Yes. I looked toward the bedroom where Elizabeth rested. For years, I believed trust was the strongest gift a father could give. But that morning I realized something else. Trust without limits becomes permission for betrayal. What do you want to protect? William asked. My wife's peace, I said immediately, and whatever dignity we still have left. After the call ended, I sat in silence, staring at the unopened wedding gift envelope. Only hours earlier, I planned to give Tyler the villa. Now it felt like something else entirely. Not love, not legacy, but blind trust that had been misused. Something inside me changed then, quietly, permanently. I started making calls. First, the bank. I requested a freeze on all accounts Tyler could access under my name. Then the wedding company. I canceled all remaining payments. Finally, property management. I restored full control of the villa under my name only. No shouting, no drama, just decisions, one after another. With every call, I felt something return, control. Elizabeth woke shortly after. She looked at me carefully, sensing the change in the room. She noticed the envelope still on the table. Are we still going? She asked softly. I looked toward the window. A part of me wanted to walk away from everything, to avoid the humiliation entirely, but another part knew the truth. If I stayed silent, I would spend the rest of my life accepting the role my son had assigned us, visible only when convenient, erased when inconvenient. Yes, I said finally, but not the way they expect. Elizabeth nodded. No more questions, she already understood. We left the house quietly. The drive felt calm in a strange way. No music, no conversation. Just silence that no longer felt heavy. Outside, the city moved normally, but inside me something had changed. We had spent years protecting Tyler from consequences, solving problems before he faced them, believing love alone would teach him gratitude. Instead, we had taught him something else: how to take without understanding cost. The wedding estate sat on a hillside overlooking the water, massive and polished, more like a luxury resort than a ceremony. Expensive cars lined the entrance. Staff moved quickly between guests with trays of champagne. Everything was designed to impress. We parked away from the main entrance. Elizabeth held my arm as we walked in. Her steps were slow but steady. I looked at her and felt something stronger rise inside me. She had fought through illness, pain, and recovery. Yet the deepest hurt still came from her own son. Inside, the hall was bright with crystal lights and expensive decoration. People laughed, talked, and posed like everything was perfect. But something about it felt empty. And I noticed something else. Very few familiar faces. Most of Tyler's old friends were gone, replaced by people connected to the Sterling family. Don't come. My son chose his wealthy in-laws over his own parents. Then karma arrived. Don't come. My son chose his wealthy in-laws over his own parents. Then what followed felt like karma coming back to settle the score. That morning was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. My only son was getting married, and after everything my wife Elizabeth had gone through over the past year, I truly believed we had finally reached a peaceful moment we could hold on to. The house was quiet, except for the soft clinking of dishes from the kitchen and the slow ticking of the clock above the fireplace. Sunlight poured through the living room windows, falling across framed photographs that had stayed in the same places for decades. Birthday pictures, school graduations, family holidays by the ocean, and one old photo of Tyler sitting on my shoulders during a 4th of July parade when he was 6 years old. I remember staring at that photo while adjusting my dark blue tie in the mirror. Something about that morning already felt wrong, even though I couldn't explain why. Elizabeth came out of the bedroom slowly, wearing a cream-colored dress she had bought only a week earlier. It was the first formal outfit she had chosen since leaving the hospital after months of treatment. She moved carefully, one hand lightly resting against the wall for balance, but her eyes had a glow I hadn't seen in a long time. She asked if her earrings were too simple for a wedding. I told her she looked beautiful, and she did. But more than that, she looked hopeful. That was what stayed with me later. She wasn't thinking about luxury, status, or expensive guests. She was simply happy to be a mother again, watching her son begin a new chapter. After everything she had endured, that meant more to her than Tyler would ever understand. I picked up a small envelope from the dining table. Inside was the deed to our beachfront villa, a property I had protected for nearly 30 years through financial crises, long nights, and constant work. I had planned to give it to Tyler privately after the ceremony, as a symbol of trust and legacy. At that moment, I still believed he understood what family meant. I still believed the values we raised him with were still there, buried under the expensive suits and polished life he now lived. Then my phone vibrated once. Not urgent, not loud, but it cut through the silence like something breaking. I looked at the screen. Tyler. I expected a simple message about timing or location. Instead, I opened a text that made my chest go cold. Dad, please don't come. Tiffany's family feels uncomfortable if you and Mom are there. I already told everyone you're traveling. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. I read it once. Then again. Slower the third time, as if understanding it better might change its meaning. My career had been built on precision. I was an engineer. I understood systems, structure, cause, and effect. But nothing in that life prepared me for the feeling of being erased from my own son's wedding. Elizabeth noticed my silence immediately. After 40 years together, she didn't need words. "What happened?" she asked softly. For a moment, I almost lied. I wanted to protect her happiness for just a little longer. But she saw it on my face before I spoke. I handed her the phone. Her eyes moved across the message. Slowly, the color left her face. She sat down carefully, one hand going to her chest as she steadied her breathing the way she had learned during treatment. Even then, she tried to excuse him. "Maybe he's just stressed," she whispered. I nodded, because I couldn't speak yet, but something inside me had already started to shift. Because it wasn't just the message. It was everything underneath it. For the past 2 years, Tyler had helped manage parts of our finances. I trusted him completely. I believed responsibility would teach him maturity. That morning, I opened our shared banking account. At first, everything looked normal. Bills, taxes, insurance. Then I saw it. Multiple payments to a luxury wedding planning company. The amounts didn't match anything simple or modest. I kept scrolling. More transactions, different dates, same company. The total slowly formed in my mind. $250,000. I sat there without moving. Not angry yet, just understanding. Tyler had told us the wedding would be small, that he didn't care about appearances. But quietly, he had built something expensive, something designed to impress Tiffany's wealthy family, while making sure we didn't fit into it. The room felt colder. Elizabeth looked at me again. "What is it?" I almost answered, but then another memory surfaced. A year earlier, Tyler had asked me to sign investment documents while I was traveling. He spoke fast, confident, certain I would trust him. I signed, because he was my son. Now I reopened those files, and everything changed. One document stopped me completely. A mortgage agreement, tied to our beachfront villa, the house Elizabeth loved most in the world, used as collateral. My stomach tightened as I read further. It was linked to an investment connected to Tiffany's father. I stopped breathing for a moment. Tyler had never told us, not once. I called my lawyer, William. When he joined the video call, I shared the documents. He stayed quiet for a long time. Too long. Finally, he said carefully, "You still have control, but you need to act immediately." I asked the question I already knew the answer to. "Is the villa tied to it?" He nodded. "Yes." I looked toward the bedroom where Elizabeth had gone to rest. Trust, I realized, had limits, and when it didn't, it became permission. "What do you want to protect?" William asked. "My wife's peace," I said, "and whatever dignity we have left." After the call ended, I didn't move for a long time. The wedding envelope sat on the table in front of me. Only hours earlier, it had been a gift. Now it felt like proof of how easily love can be misused. That was the moment something inside me changed. Quietly, permanently, I started making calls. The bank first. I froze every account Tyler had access to. Then the wedding planner. I canceled all payments. Finally, property management. I restored full control of the villa under my name. No shouting, no confrontation, just decisions. One by one. With every step, something returned to me. Control. Elizabeth woke later and saw my face immediately. She noticed the change before I said a word. "Are we still going?" she asked softly. I looked out the window. Part of me wanted to disappear from it all, but another part knew the truth. If I stayed silent, I would spend the rest of my life accepting the role my son had given us, useful when needed, invisible when not. "Yes," I said finally, "but not the way they expect." Elizabeth nodded. She understood without asking more. We left quietly. The drive to the estate felt strangely calm. No music, no tension, just silence that no longer hurt. The city passed by as I realized something painful. We had spent years protecting Tyler from consequences, and in doing so, we never taught him to value the people who protected him. The wedding estate sat on a hillside overlooking the water, large, polished, and excessive. Luxury cars lined the entrance. Staff moved quickly with champagne. Everything looked perfect on the surface. We parked away from the main entrance. Elizabeth held my arm as we walked in. Her steps were slow but steady. Inside, the hall sparkled with crystal lights and expensive decorations. People laughed, talked, and performed happiness like a script. But something felt off. And as I looked around, I realized most familiar faces from Tyler's past were gone, replaced by strangers connected to the Sterling family. Now, both worlds were falling apart at the same time. Mr. Sterling tried to take control of the situation again, speaking quickly about misunderstandings and saying that emotions were running too high, but it was already too late for that. The feeling in the room had completely shifted. The earlier admiration that filled the hall was gone without a trace. The guests were no longer looking at everything with excitement or respect. Instead, they looked uneasy, uncertain, and a little shocked, as if they were suddenly not sure they belonged there anymore. The idea of wealth and perfection that had once made everything look attractive had completely faded the moment honesty entered the room and broke the illusion. Then Tiffany spoke the words that ended everything in that moment. Her voice was cold, steady, and clear, and it cut through the silence. She said that if none of the promises that had been made were actually real, then there was no point in continuing the wedding at all. The sentence hung in the air like something heavy that could not be removed or ignored. Nobody interrupted her. Nobody stepped forward to defend Tyler. Not a single person tried to change her mind or soften what had just been said. After that, the Sterling family quietly collected themselves. There were no arguments, no dramatic scenes, and no more explanations. They simply turned and began walking out of the hall one by one, as if something inside them had shut down completely. Tiffany followed them slowly, and she never once turned her head back. She did not look at Tyler, not even for a second, even though only minutes earlier she had been standing there as his bride-to-be. The crowd naturally moved aside to make space for them, almost like the room itself was letting them go. Tyler stayed where he was near the front, standing close to the stage, completely alone now. The silence around him felt heavier than the noise had been before. For a few long moments, nobody said anything. I could still hear whispers around the hall, but they sounded far away, like they belonged to another place. My son finally began walking toward me, slowly and unsteadily. His face looked pale, drained, and completely exhausted, as if all his confidence had been stripped away in one sudden moment. "I was wrong," he said quietly, his voice barely holding together. "Please, just give me some time. I can fix this." I looked at him for a long moment without speaking right away. Underneath the expensive suit and carefully built image, I didn't see the confident man he had tried so hard to appear as. Instead, I saw someone who had spent too many years avoiding responsibility, someone who had pushed away consequences until they all arrived at once and could no longer be delayed. "I'm not destroying your future," I said in a calm and steady voice. "I'm only taking back what already belongs to me." Elizabeth was standing right beside me the entire time, quiet and still. She slowly reached for my hand and held it tightly. I could feel a slight shake in her fingers, not because she was afraid, but because her heart was finally breaking in a way that had turned into acceptance rather than shock. It was the kind of sadness that comes when you stop expecting things to change. We left the estate together without turning back even once. Every step away from that place felt heavier at first, and then strangely lighter, as if something had finally been released. The drive home felt completely different from the drive earlier that day. Before, there had still been a small hope inside me that things could somehow be fixed quietly, without breaking everything apart. But now I understood something I had not fully accepted before. Some illusions cannot be repaired gently. They have to collapse completely before the truth can finally exist in the open. A few days after that night, Elizabeth and I did not return home right away. Instead, we rented a small room overlooking the bay. It was simple and quiet, nothing like the large spaces we had been surrounded by before. Every morning, we would sit together near the window and drink tea while watching the cold ocean air move across the harbor. The world outside felt slower there, calmer in a way we had not felt in years. For the first time in a long while, our lives were no longer centered around trying to protect Tyler from the consequences of his own choices. During that same week, I made a final decision that had been sitting in my mind for some time. I called William and told him to proceed with selling the beachfront villa. There was a short pause on the line before he asked me carefully if I was absolutely certain about it. I answered without hesitation and said yes. I explained that the house was originally meant to be a gift, something meaningful for the family, but now it needed a different purpose entirely. Together, we arranged for the property to be sold and used to create a scholarship fund in Elizabeth's name. The money from the villa was no longer going to support luxury or appearances or expectations tied to family image. Instead, it would go toward helping young students who simply needed a fair and honest chance to move forward in life without privilege deciding everything for them. When I later told Elizabeth about what I had done, she became silent for a moment. Then tears slowly filled her eyes. It was the first time she had cried since the wedding. Her voice was soft when she finally spoke. "If someone else can have a better future because of this," she said quietly, "then maybe none of it was truly wasted." Time moved forward slowly after that. Tyler tried calling many times. I saw his name appear on my phone again and again. I did not answer right away. It was not because I felt hatred toward him, but because I finally understood something important. If I kept stepping in to save him every time, I would only be delaying the lesson that life itself needed to teach him. Sometimes love is not about protecting someone from every fall, but about allowing them to finally understand the weight of their own choices. One evening, while rain was falling outside, a final message came through. It was short. "I understand now. I'm sorry." I read it quietly, sitting there for a while without responding. Then I placed the phone down on the table. I did not reply. Some apologies do not become real the moment they are written. They need silence. They need time to settle before they can carry any true meaning. Months passed, and eventually Elizabeth and I attended the first scholarship ceremony together. It was nothing like the world we had recently left behind. There were no grand decorations, no expensive arrangements, no photographers trying to capture perfect images for display. There were no speeches made for status or appearances. Instead, there was a small and simple room filled with students and families who carried something much more valuable than wealth: hope. A young girl walked forward to receive the first scholarship award created in Elizabeth's name. Her hands were shaking slightly as she held it, and her eyes were full of gratitude and disbelief. When she thanked us, Elizabeth gently squeezed my hand beside her, holding on tightly as if she needed to feel that moment was real. In that quiet moment, something inside me became very clear. The most meaningful thing parents can leave behind is not money, not property, and not status or recognition. It is the strength to understand that love should never mean losing yourself. It is the courage to stop allowing care and sacrifice to be mistaken for weakness. That night, when we returned home to Seattle, I stood by the bedroom window for a long time. Outside, the city lights reflected softly against the wet streets, shimmering in the rain. I did not think about what I needed to fix anymore, or what I needed to sacrifice next for my son's future. For the first time in many years, my thoughts were not centered on responsibility that crushed me. Instead, I thought about peace, real peace. The kind that does not come from avoiding truth, but from finally accepting it. The kind that arrives only after illusion has fully disappeared and there is nothing left to pretend. Some relationships do not end with shouting or anger or dramatic endings. Sometimes they fade in silence, the exact moment you realize your own dignity also deserves to exist, to breathe, and to be respected. And sometimes, losing the version of family you spent your whole life trying to protect is not a failure at all. It is the very thing that finally frees you to live without fear, without illusion, and without losing yourself in the process.